The stars hung like distant warnings in the night sky over Colony 7, where the grim silhouette of a Bakhtari watchtower cast long shadows across the settlement. Dr. Kim Ji-soo pulled her worn jacket tighter around her shoulders as she hurried through the narrow streets. Curfew would begin in 20 minutes, and being caught outside meant public lashing, if you were lucky. Ji-soo clutched her medical bag close. Inside were bandages and medicines the Bakhtari didn't know she had. The aliens who ruled the galaxy believed humans were simple creatures who needed only the most basic medical care to remain productive. They never understood how humans shared resources, creating hidden stockpiles over years. "Doctor," a voice whispered from a darkened doorway. An old man stood there, his work-worn hands trembling slightly. "My grandson's fever hasn't broken." Ji-soo nodded and slipped inside. The single room dwelling smelled of sweat and the strange metallic odor that came from working in the Bakhtari processing plants. On a thin mat lay a boy no more than 10, his face flushed with fever. "How long?" Ji-soo asked, already reaching for her hidden antibiotics. 3 days, the old man replied. "If the overseers find out he's sick?" Ji-soo nodded grimly. Sick workers disappeared. The Bakhtari called it resource optimization. As she treated the boy, the door creaked open. Ji-soo's heart jumped to her throat until she saw a small face peek through. Lee Ha-na, just 7 years old, with serious eyes that seemed to understand too much about their cruel world. "I brought this," Ha-na whispered, holding out a small paper crane. "My mom says they bring good luck." She placed it beside the sick boy's head and vanished before Ji-soo could thank her. Ha-na was like that, appearing when people needed hope most, leaving behind small treasures she'd created from nothing. Last week she'd left wildflowers at the door of a woman whose husband had been taken for advanced labor assignment, a euphemism everyone knew meant the mines where humans rarely survived a year. Outside, the Bakhtari patrol siren wailed, announcing curfew. Ji-soo finished her treatment quickly, giving strict instructions to the grandfather before slipping out the back way. The streets were empty now, and she kept to the shadows, moving through passages that didn't appear on official colony maps. From his observation post high above the human settlement, Park Tae-ho watched the lone figure moving through the shadows with infrared enhancement. He should report the curfew violation, but instead, he found himself tracking the human's careful path with growing curiosity. This was the 17th time he'd observed this particular human breaking curfew, always returning to the same dwelling, in Sector 4 after visiting different homes throughout the colony. "You're fascinated by them again," his superior, Commander Ryu, said from behind him. "These humans are nothing special, just another species that needs firm control." Tae-ho didn't turn. "They adapt differently than other species we've conquered. Look at their survival rates in the mining operations, 23% higher than the Vorax despite having inferior physical strength." Commander Ryu snorted. "They break easily enough when properly motivated. Fear is universal, observer." "Park." "Is it?" Tae-ho murmured, watching as the human slipped into a dwelling just before a patrol rounded the corner. 3 centuries we've ruled them through fear, yet they still find ways to resist in small ways. "Small resistances are meaningless," Commander Ryu said dismissively. "Tomorrow's demonstration will remind the colony of the cost of defiance. The resource quotas must be met." The next morning, Ji-soo woke to the sound of the gathering siren. Her stomach twisted into a knot. Gathering sirens never meant anything good. She joined the stream of humans trudging toward the central square. The Bakhtari stood on their elevated platform, armor gleaming in the morning sun. Their insectoid features were hidden behind their ceremonial masks. The Empire believed subject species should never see their true faces, only symbols of power. "Resource quota 37B has fallen short for the 3rd consecutive cycle," the colony administrator announced through its translator. "Examples must be made." 5 humans were brought forward, miners who had failed to meet impossible quotas. Ji-soo recognized 2 of them from her clinic. One still had bandages she'd applied to his burned hands just days before. From her position in the crowd, Ji-soo saw little Ha-na clutching her mother's hand. The child's eyes were wide, but she didn't cry like some of the younger children. Instead, she watched with that same solemn understanding that made her seem far older than her years. As the punishment began, Jisoo closed her eyes briefly. This was how the Bakhtari maintained control. Public displays of cruelty designed to break not just the victims but everyone forced to watch. After 3 centuries of occupation, humans had learned to endure, to keep their faces blank while inside, their resolve hardened like steel in fire. What the Bakhtari never understood was that each demonstration created not just fear, but a quiet fury that humans had learned to hide beneath their submission. In homes and hidden places they whispered stories of Earth, a planet most had never seen where humans had once lived free. They taught their children about dignity in whispers, keeping alive the idea that being human meant more than just surviving. As the crowd dispersed after the demonstration, Jisoo noticed Hana slipping something into the pocket of an old woman whose son had been among those punished. Later she would learn it was a smooth stone the child had painted with a simple rising sun, an ancient symbol of hope that predated the occupation. From his observation post, Taeho watched the humans return to their labors, their faces carefully empty of expression. Yet something about their coordinated movements, the way information seemed to pass without words, continued to trouble him. 3 centuries of conquest had taught the Bakhtari that fear was the universal constant, the one reliable tool of control. But watching the small human child quietly moving among her people, leaving tiny tokens in her wake, Taeho couldn't silence the doubt growing in his mind. What if the Empire had fundamentally misunderstood these creatures? What if, in all their calculations of human weakness, they had missed something essential about human strength? The morning air held a metallic taste as Hana crept along the edge of the settlement boundary. She wasn't supposed to be this far out, but the purple mountain flowers grew thickest here and old Mrs. Song had been coughing all week. Hana's mother always said these flowers made the best tea for chest colds. Keeping low to the ground, she gathered the delicate blooms, her small fingers working quickly. Her parents would worry if she was gone too long, especially with the increased Bakhtari patrols lately. Resource shipments were leaving for the central planets today, which always meant more guards and stricter enforcement. A sound made her freeze, the distinctive whir of Bakhtari transport vehicles approaching from beyond the ridge. Clutching her, flowers. Hana ducked behind a large rock, making herself as small as possible. This wasn't a normal patrol route. Something was happening. 3 transports crested the hill, stopping in the clearing just 50 meters from her hiding spot. The rear doors opened and a group of humans were pushed out, their hands bound behind their backs. Hana recognized Mr. Lee, who worked in the communication center, and Ms. Park from the food distribution office. There were others too, all looking tired and bruised. A Bakhtari commander emerged from the lead vehicle, its segmented armor catching the morning light. "Kneel!" the translator voice boomed. The humans complied, some more slowly than others. Hana's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they would hear it. She shouldn't be seeing this. Everyone knew what happened at these special corrections. "Your crimes against the Bakhtari Empire have been documented," the commander stated. "Unauthorized communication, information hoarding, failure to report dissent." Mr. Lee looked up, his voice steady despite everything. "We've broken no laws. We've met every quota." The commander made a clicking sound that the translator didn't convert. "You believe yourselves clever, using old radio frequencies we supposedly don't monitor. Did you think we wouldn't notice your little coded messages hidden in routine reports?" Hana's breath caught. Adults sometimes whispered about the network when they thought children weren't listening. Dr. Jisoo had mentioned it once to her mother, talking about threads connecting drops of water. The Bakhtari commander raised his weapon. "The Empire thrives because examples are made. The lesson must be clear." Hana wanted to run, to close her eyes, but her body wouldn't move. The first shot echoed across the clearing. Mr. Lee fell forward, then another shot, and another. A small sound escaped her throat, not quite a cry, but enough. The commander's head snapped toward her hiding place. compound eyes glinting behind the ceremonial mask. "Search that area," he ordered. Hana dropped the flowers and ran, her small legs pumping as fast as they could. She heard the heavy footsteps of the Bakhtari guards behind her. The settlement was still a quarter-mile away. She wouldn't make it. Instead, she ducked into a drainage tunnel, one of the narrow passages that carried away wastewater. The opening was small, perfect for a child, but too tight for most adults. Certainly too small for a Bakhtari. She crawled through the damp darkness, scraping her knees and elbows, trying not to cry. If she could just reach the main settlement tunnel junction, she could find her way home. Her father had shown her all the hidden ways through the colony, just in case, he'd said with that serious look adults got when they were saying something important. Daylight appeared ahead as the tunnel opened near the processing plant. Hana paused, listening for pursuit. Hearing nothing, she slowly peeked out. A Bakhtari transport was parked directly in front of the tunnel exit. Before she could retreat back into the darkness, rough hands grabbed her, pulling her into the harsh sunlight. The guard's mask loomed over her, its artificial voice flat and emotionless. Unauthorized human juvenile detected outside permitted boundaries. Hana was brought to the colony center, where the Bakhtari commander examined her like an interesting insect. Park Tae-ho stood nearby, his observer insignia marking him as different from the military personnel. "A child," Tae-ho said, his translator making the words sound almost gentle. "She poses no threat." The commander turned his masked face. "She witnessed a security operation. Protocol is clear." "She's a child," Tae-ho repeated. "The humans place unusual value on their young. Using standard protocol here may create unnecessary complications." The commander's mandibles clicked behind his mask. "Your fascination with human behavior is noted, Observer Park. But sentiment has no place in Empire management. The girl will serve as today's lesson." Within an hour, the gathering siren echoed across the colony. Confused humans emerged from their dwellings and workplaces. 2 gatherings in 1 week was unprecedented. Jisoo joined the crowd, a sense of dread building. In her stomach, something was wrong. Very wrong. When she saw Hana standing on the platform, tiny and alone beside the towering Bakhtari guards, Jisoo had to clamp her hand over her mouth to stop from screaming. Near the front of the crowd, Hana's parents were being physically restrained, her mother's face a mask of terror and rage. This juvenile was apprehended witnessing a restricted security operation, the administrator announced. The penalty for such violations is clear under imperial law. A murmur ran through the crowd. Not just fear this time, but something else. Something the colony hadn't risked showing in generations. The Bakhtari commander stepped forward. "Let this serve as a reminder that Empire law applies to all ages. No exceptions." Jisoo saw Hana's eyes searching the crowd, finding her parents. The child's face was tear-streaked but oddly composed, as if she understood something profound about this moment. From his position on the platform, Tae-ho watched the human crowd with growing unease. Their vital signs were showing unusual patterns: heart rates synchronizing, stress hormones spiking in unified waves. He'd never seen such a biological response in any subject species. "This is a tactical error," he said quietly to his superior. "Your objection is noted, Observer," the commander replied, without turning, "and irrelevant." When it was done, when the small body lay still on the platform, the Bakhtari administrator addressed the silent crowd. "Return to your assigned duties. Production quotas remain in effect." But the humans didn't move, not immediately. For exactly 17 seconds, Tae-ho counted. No one in the crowd moved a muscle, no sound, no visible reaction. Just absolute, perfect stillness, as if the entire colony had briefly stopped breathing. Then, as one, they dispersed. No wailing, no protests, just silent, orderly movement. That night, as Tae-ho reviewed the colony data, he noticed something odd. Power consumption had dropped by exactly 12% across all sectors. Water usage was down 14%. Most concerning, the micro-expressions his special sensors detected on human faces had changed. The fear markers were gone, replaced by something his system couldn't categorize. He submitted an urgent report to Imperial Command. Recommend immediate protocol review. Current approach may have triggered unknown human response mechanism. Request additional observer team and behavioral analysis. The reply came swiftly. Observation noted. Continue standard operations. Fear response temporary. Productivity will normalize within standard parameters. Tejo stood at his viewport, watching the darkened human settlement. For the first time in his career, he hoped Imperial Command was right. 3 days passed. The colony functioned with mechanical precision. Not a single human broke curfew. Not one failed to meet quota. Their compliance was perfect. Too perfect. 3 days after Hana's death, Jisoo sat in her hidden basement clinic staring at the communication device in her hands. For years it had remained silent except for occasional medical emergencies. Now it pulsed with steady light, receiving coded messages from 17 different colonies. "It's time," she whispered to the small group gathered around her. These were ordinary people, miners, technicians, food workers, who had lived double lives for years. They had children who had never known a world without Bakhtari rule. They had endured beatings, watched friends disappear, and still they had prepared. Patiently, methodically, "Are we ready?" asked Sung Min, a maintenance worker who had spent 15 years mapping the colony's power systems while appearing to be nothing more than a simple repairman. Jisoo nodded. "The other colonies are in position. The signal goes out at midnight." Young Ho, a former teacher now working in the mines, looked troubled. "All these years of waiting, and it takes a child's death to finally push us." "Not just any child," Jisoo said quietly. "Hana connected people, even the ones who'd given up hope. The Bakhtari never understood what they did when they killed her in front of everyone." An older woman who worked in the food distribution center spoke up. "My grandmother used to tell stories about Earth, about how humans survived by adapting, by appearing weak when we needed to gather strength. The Bakhtari believe their fear tactics work because we let them believe it," Jisoo said, checking her watch. "They thought they were watching us break. They were actually watching us learn." As midnight approached, Jisoo's thoughts went to Hana's parents. They had been the first to volunteer for the most dangerous mission. Nothing could bring their daughter back, but they could ensure her death meant something. In his observation tower, Tejo stared at his data screens with growing alarm. Small anomalies had been appearing all evening. Power fluctuations, brief communication bursts that disappeared too quickly to trace, unusual movement patterns among off-duty workers. "Command, I'm detecting unusual patterns in sectors 7 through 12, he reported. The response was dismissive. "Minor fluctuations within acceptable parameters. Maintain standard surveillance." Tejo zoomed in on the medical sector where equipment readings had spiked briefly. "Something's happening. Request permission to deploy additional drones." "Request denied. Your concerns have been noted, Observer Park. Focus on productivity metrics for the quarterly report." Tejo's mandibles clicked in frustration behind his mask. For 3 days he had documented the strange, synchronized behavior of the human colony, their eerie compliance, the way they moved in harmony without visible communication. His superiors saw only the perfect production numbers and dismissed his warnings. At precisely midnight, Jisoo pressed the signal button. Across 17 colonies spread through the outer systems, humans who had played the role of obedient subjects for generations moved as one. The first explosion took out the Bakhtari communication tower in Sector 9. Before the alarm could sound, the power grid failed, emergency systems included. In the darkness, humans who had memorized every inch of their colony moved with certainty, while the Bakhtari guards fumbled with light sources. "Status report," Commander Ryu bellowed as the observation tower's systems flickered. Tejo stared at his rapidly failing monitors. "We're losing connection to all sectors. Backup systems are not responding." "Impossible. The humans don't have the technical capability for a coordinated attack." A massive explosion rocked the tower, sending both Bakhtari stumbling. Through the viewport, Teho saw flames engulfing the munitions depot. They shouldn't have had the explosives either, Teho observed dryly. On the colony streets, Jisoo led a team through the darkness. Each person carried weapons that had been built piece by piece over years, hidden in walls and under floorboards. The design was simple but effective, exploiting a weakness in Bakhtari armor that the humans had discovered during an autopsy of a fallen guard years ago. Team 2, secure the landing bay, Jisoo ordered through her communicator, no longer bothering, with codes. Team 3, prisoner release in the East Sector. The Bakhtari had never permitted humans to have advanced technology. What they hadn't realized was that humans had been studying them all along, learning their systems, identifying weaknesses, and preparing. In the central plaza where Hana had been killed, her parents led the assault on the administrative building. They moved with cold precision, their grief transformed into deadly focus. The Bakhtari guards who had always seemed so intimidating now appeared confused, their coordinated defense falling apart without central command. Taiho and Commander Ryu fought their way through burning corridors as the observation tower began to collapse around them. "We need to reach the emergency shuttle," Ryu shouted. "Imperial reinforcements will crush this rebellion within days." Taiho wasn't so certain. As they rounded a corner, they encountered a group of humans armed with makeshift weapons. At their center stood a woman Taiho recognized from his surveillance, the one who moved at night visiting different dwellings. "Observer Park," Jisoo said calmly, raising her weapon. "We've been watching you watching us." "How is this possible?" Ryu demanded. "You're just miners and farmers." "We're humans," Jisoo corrected. "We adapt, we plan, and we remember." Commander Ryu reached for his sidearm, but 3 shots hit him before he could fire, his armored body crumpling to the floor. Jisoo kept her weapon trained on Taiho. "You were the one who tried to save Hana." Taiho's translator crackled. "It was tactically unsound to kill a child. I told them it would provoke response." "Not response," Jisoo said. "Awakening. We were always going to fight back. We were just waiting for the right moment." "The Empire will send ships," Taiho warned. "This colony cannot stand against them." Jisoo smiled for the first time. Who said anything about just this colony? On his remaining functional monitor, Taiho watched in disbelief as reports flowed in from across the sector. 17 Bakhtari outposts had fallen simultaneously. Imperial ships were being captured intact. The carefully maintained fear that had controlled humans for 3 centuries had transformed into something the Empire had never anticipated. "How long have you been planning this?" Taiho asked. "Since the day your ships arrived," Jisoo replied. 300 years of appearing to submit while we studied every weakness, every flaw in your systems. We passed the knowledge through generations, waiting for the day when enough colonies could move together. By dawn, the colony was secured. Bakhtari survivors were contained in the very cells they had used for human prisoners. In the command center, Jisoo and her team established communication with other liberated colonies. "Outpost 7 secured," came a voice over the channel. "Moving to Phase 2. Outpost 12 reporting. Bakhtari fleet vessel captured intact. Weapon systems operational." Taiho, now a prisoner, watched the humans with new understanding. "You let us believe we had broken your spirit." "You can't break what you don't understand," Jisoo told him. "The Empire never bothered to truly study us. You saw what you expected to see. A primitive species cowed by superior technology. What happens now?" Taiho asked. Jisoo looked at the star map, where signals from liberated colonies continued to appear. "Now we show the Empire what humans are really capable of when we stop pretending to be weak." In the weeks that followed, the story spread through the galaxy, how the death of one human child had been the catalyst that unleashed a coordinated uprising generations in the making. Species that had lived under Bakhtari rule for centuries watched in astonishment as the supposedly primitive humans moved with military precision to secure system after system. The Empire had thrived on fear for too long. They had never considered that fear could be endured, channeled, and transformed. They had never imagined that their greatest weapons against humanity, public executions and demonstrations of power, had actually been creating the perfect conditions for revolution. As Jisoo told Tai-Ho on the day they captured their first Imperial warship, the Bakhtari thought they were teaching us to be afraid. Instead, they taught us to be patient. The captured Bakhtari warship Indomitable hung in orbit above Colony 7, its sleek hull now bearing the simple blue circle that had become the symbol of the human resistance. On the bridge, Jisoo stared at the tactical display showing the progress of what many were now calling the Freedom Wave, a coordinated offensive sweeping through the outer systems at a pace that had shocked even the most optimistic rebel leaders. "Fleet Admiral wants to speak with you," Young-Ho said, handing her a communication device. 6 weeks ago, he had been just another miner. Now he commanded the ship's weapons systems with a confidence that would have been unimaginable under Bakhtari rule. Jisoo nodded and took the call privately in what had once been the captain's quarters. "This is Jisoo. The Centauri system has fallen." The Admiral's voice came through, tight with excitement. "That's the 4th major system in 2 weeks. The Bakhtari are withdrawing faster than we can pursue. They're regrouping, not retreating," Jisoo cautioned. "They still don't understand what they're fighting against. That's why I'm calling. High Command wants you to head the interrogation of the Observer. He's the highest-ranking official we've captured, and he seems different from the others." Jisoo thought of Tai-Ho, who had spent the past weeks in a comfortable but secure cabin. Unlike other captured Bakhtari, he had cooperated, providing valuable information about Imperial protocols and defenses. "I'll speak with him again," she agreed. When she entered his quarters, Tai-Ho was studying a human history text on a tablet. He had requested access to their historical archives, an unusual interest for a Bakhtari. "Your rebellion continues to exceed Imperial projections," he said without looking up. "Command will be revising their threat assessment." "It's not a rebellion anymore," Jisoo replied, sitting across from him. 4 major systems have fallen. The Nix Alliance has pledged support. The Sorans and Velid have overthrown their Bakhtari governors. This got his attention. The Sorans had been loyal Imperial subjects for 5 centuries. The Empire has ruled through fear for millennia. This coordination between species is unprecedented. That's why I'm here. We need to understand what we're really facing. The Bakhtari military response has been strange, almost hesitant. Tai-Ho set down the tablet. They are encountering something they don't comprehend. The Empire conquers through superior technology and maintains control through fear. Your species was classified as technologically primitive, but surprisingly resilient. A labor resource, nothing more. Yet here we are, capturing your warships and operating your weapon systems. Yes, Tai-Ho agreed. Here you are. The question that's fascinating Imperial Command is, how? Jisoo leaned forward. I've been authorized to offer you something. A tour of our facilities in exchange for your continued insights. Tai-Ho's compound eyes flickered with what Jisoo had learned to recognize as surprise. You would show an Imperial observer your military capabilities? Some of them, Jisoo said with a slight smile. Follow me. Under heavy guard, Tai-Ho was escorted through the colony to a section that had been restricted even under Bakhtari rule, supposedly a waste processing facility. Inside, however, was something entirely different. The vast underground chamber hummed with activity. Humans worked at stations that seemed cobbled together from disparate technologies, yet functioned with surprising efficiency. Giant screens displayed star maps and fleet movements. In one corner, a group huddled around what appeared to be a dissected Bakhtari pulse rifle, except it had been modified in ways Tai-Ho didn't recognize. Welcome to Hub 7, Jisoo said. One of 23 research and development centers that have been operating for the past 70 years. Tai-Ho stopped walking, his translator momentarily silent as he processed what he was seeing. This technology, some of it is beyond current Imperial science. Not beyond, said a new voice. An older man approached, Choi Min-ho, his white hair contrasting with his dark eyes that missed nothing. Just different paths of development, While the Empire focused on weapons of control, we explored adaptive systems and biomechanical integration. Minho led them to a testing area where a human wore what looked like standard mining equipment. "Show our guest," he instructed. The worker nodded and engaged a hidden switch. The mining suit transformed, components shifting and hardening into a combat exoskeleton that could withstand Bactari pulse weapons. "Our primitive mining equipment," Jisoo explained, designed to appear non-threatening while containing component parts that could be quickly reassembled when needed. The Empire cataloged all human technology, Taeho objected. "Annual inspections, verified compliance with development restrictions." Minho chuckled. "The Empire inspected what we showed them. They counted our computers, our vehicles, our power systems. They never understood that we'd developed an entirely parallel technology base, disguised as everyday items or hidden beneath their very outposts." They continued the tour, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Taeho learned how humans had developed communicators that utilized the gaps between Bactari monitoring frequencies, how they had created weapons specifically designed to target weaknesses in Imperial armor that only became apparent when the armor was in motion, how they had built an entire shadow infrastructure while maintaining the appearance of a subjugated species. "Our greatest advantage," Jisoo explained as they entered a biological research lab, "was that you never really studied us. The Empire saw our technological limitations and assumed we posed no threat. You never investigated why humans could survive in mines that killed other species, or why our birth rates remained stable despite harsh conditions." "Adaptive biology," Taeho realized. "Your species evolves more rapidly than our models predicted. Not just our bodies," Minho added, "our social structures, our information sharing, our problem-solving approaches. When isolated human colonies somehow developed nearly identical resistance technologies, your analysts attributed it to smuggling or coincidence." "It was neither," Jisoo said. "We developed a method of encoding technical specifications into cultural items. Songs, stories, craft patterns, things your sensors would never recognize as dangerous. A child's lullaby might contain the formula for a new explosive compound. A popular dance might teach the timing sequence for disabling Bactari security systems." Taeho's mandibles clicked, rapidly, a sign of distress his translator didn't convey. This level of coordination without detection, it should not be possible. In the final room of the tour, a giant holographic display showed the face of a small girl, Hana, her solemn eyes seeming to watch them. "Why show me this?" Taeho asked. "Because you need to understand what really happened when your commander executed her," Jisoo said quietly. "We had been preparing for generations, building our shadow technology, creating our networks. But we were patient, perhaps too patient. Some colonies were ready to move decades ago. Others counseled waiting until more systems could join simultaneously." Minho stepped forward. "Hana's death was broadcast to every human settlement in the sector. When they saw a child executed simply for being in the wrong place, a child known for her kindness, something changed. What the Bactari never understood," Jisoo continued, "is that humans can endure almost anything done to ourselves, but we transform into something else entirely when our children are threatened. Not just parents, all of us. It's written into our biology, our culture, our deepest instincts." Taeho studied the child's face on the screen. "A unifying event." "The final catalyst," Jisoo corrected. "The moment when patience ended and action began. 300 years of preparation unleashed in a single moment of clarity." As they walked back to his quarters, Taeho was uncharacteristically silent. Finally, he spoke. "The Empire has gravely miscalculated." "Yes," Jisoo agreed. "You showed me these things for a reason. What do you want from me?" Jisoo stopped walking and faced him directly. "The truth about the Imperial homeworld defenses. The truth about what we're really fighting. Because something doesn't add up. Your ships are retreating too easily. Your command structure is fracturing too quickly." Taeho's compound eyes fixed on her. You believe there is deception. I believe the Empire is more vulnerable than it wants us to know. After a long pause, Taeho nodded. Take me to your command council. There are things about the Bakhtari Empire that even most Bakhtari don't know. Secrets that will change how you fight this war. As they walked toward the command center, emergency alarms suddenly blared. Young Ho's voice came over the colony-wide communication system. Multiple Imperial ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Jisoo looked at Taeho, searching for any sign of prior knowledge, any hint of betrayal. Not Imperial tactical standard, Taeho said quickly. They would never announce their arrival with such a small force. Something else is happening. The largest screen in the command center showed 5 Bakhtari cruisers taking position around the colony. A transmission request flashed on the communication panel. Put it through, Jisoo ordered. The screen filled with the image of a Bakhtari wearing the insignia of Imperial High Command. Its translator voice echoed through the silent room. Attention, human resistance. I am Executor Quan of the Imperial Fleet. I come bearing an offer from the Emperor himself. Your species has proven unexpectedly formidable. The Emperor proposes terms for human independence within the Imperial structure. Murmurs broke out across the command center. Jisoo glanced at Taeho, whose posture had gone rigid. What terms? Jisoo asked. The executor's mandibles shifted in what might have been the Bakhtari equivalent of a smile. Full autonomy for human colonies. Removal of technological restrictions. Non-aggression pact guaranteed by Imperial decree. And what would we offer in return? Jisoo asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Merely an end to aggression against Imperial interests and, most importantly, cessation of all contact with other subject species. The human rebellion is your affair alone. There is no need to involve the Sorens, the Velid, or other loyal Imperial subjects. Now Jisoo understood. The Bakhtari weren't afraid of humans. They were afraid of what humans represented. The first, successful multi-species resistance in Imperial history. I'll need to consult with our leadership, Jisoo said carefully. Of course. You have 12 hours to consider the Emperor's generosity. When the transmission ended, Jisoo turned to Taeho. Is this what you were going to tell us? The observer nodded slowly. The Empire isn't built on technology or even military might. It's built on isolation. On ensuring that no subjugated species ever truly cooperates with another. On maintaining the illusion that resistance is futile because you stand alone. And we've broken that illusion, Minho said softly. You've shattered it, Taeho confirmed. For the first time in known history, 12 hours wasn't much time to decide the future of humanity, and possibly the galaxy. Jisoo stood in the crowded command center, where representatives from 17 liberated colonies argued via holographic projections. The Bakhtari offer of separate peace for humans alone had sparked fierce debate. We should take the deal, urged the representative from Colony 12, a mining outpost that had suffered heavy casualties in the initial uprising. Our people have lived under Bakhtari boots for 3 centuries. Freedom for humans is what we fought for. At what cost? Countered the silver-haired woman from Colony 5. We leave the Sorens and Velid to face Imperial retribution after they joined our cause? Young Ho studied the tactical displays showing the 5 Imperial cruisers maintaining position just outside weapons range. They're scared, he observed. The mighty Empire doesn't offer terms to primitive species, unless they're truly desperate. Jisoo turned to Taeho, who had been granted observer status at this historic meeting. Your insights? The Bakhtari straightened, looking oddly vulnerable without his Imperial uniform. The offer is unprecedented, he admitted. In 9,000 years of Imperial history, no conquered species has ever been granted autonomy. Which means, Jisoo pressed, which means you have leveraged something the Empire fears more than defeat on the battlefield. The contagion of cooperation. Jisoo nodded slowly. She'd suspected as much since their earlier conversation. They're not afraid of humans. They're afraid of what we represent. The possibility that different species can work together against them. The debate continued for hours, passionate arguments from both sides. Some colonies had lost too much, suffered too greatly to risk their chance at freedom. Others saw beyond immediate human interests to the larger struggle against imperial tyranny. The deadline approached. Minho pulled Jisoo aside. "There's something you need to see before the final vote. Someone you should meet." He led her to a secure communication room where a strange figure waited, tall and sinuous with iridescent scales and 4 arms. A Soren elder, one of the galaxy's oldest and most subjugated species. "Greetings, Dr. Kim Jisoo," the elder said, her translator producing a melodic human voice. "I am Thalessa, speaker for the Soren Collective." Jisoo bowed respectfully. "It's an honor, speaker. I didn't realize any Soren representatives had reached our territory." "I am not in your territory," Thalessa clarified. "I speak from the sacred caves of Soren Prime, which the Bactari believe still secure under their control." A sound like chimes accompanied what might have been Soren laughter. "They are no longer well informed about conditions on our world." Minho activated a holographic display showing star systems far beyond the outer colonies. "The Sorens have been monitoring Imperial communications. The Bactari are not just offering terms to humans. They're making similar offers to every species that has joined the resistance. Separate peace deals, each one requiring abandonment of interspecies cooperation." "Divide and conquer," Jisoo murmured. "Their oldest strategy." "And still effective," Thalessa acknowledged. 3 species have already accepted terms, but others are watching what humans decide. Your species has become symbolic." Jisoo looked sharply at the Soren. "Why?" "Because you were the first to successfully rise up. Because you showed it could be done. And because of the child." "Hana," Jisoo whispered. "Yes," Thalessa confirmed. News of her execution spread far beyond human colonies. The image of a small female child standing with dignity before imperial executioners? It resonated across species boundaries. Even those physiologically different from humans understood its significance. Jisoo felt a weight settling on her shoulders. What had begun as a human fight for freedom had transformed into something far greater. "What would you have us do?" she asked the Soren elder. Thalessa's 4 hands moved in a complex gesture that her translator didn't capture. "I would not presume to tell humans what choice to make. I merely offer information so your choice may be fully informed. The Empire fears united resistance more than anything. For 9 millennia, they have ensured that no species views another as a true ally. Until now." When Jisoo returned to the command center, the representatives had fallen silent, waiting for her input before the final vote. Young-ho gave her a questioning look, but she shook her head slightly. This wasn't about tactical advantages or military strategy anymore. "The deadline is in 20 minutes, she said quietly. "Before we vote, I want to show you something." On the main screen, she displayed an image that had been transmitted from the furthest reaches of known space. A simple drawing of a small girl holding a flower, recreated in the artistic styles of 7 different species. Below it, in multiple languages, were the words, "For Hana, for all children." The Empire didn't just underestimate humans, Jisoo continued. They underestimated the power of a single story to unite those who had never found common ground before. When Hana died, something new was born. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous, but it was decisive. As the deadline approached, Jisoo took her place before the communication array, flanked by representatives from each colony. Young-ho gave her hand a quick squeeze of support before stepping back. The Bactari executor's image appeared on screen, mandibles clicking impatiently. "Have humans reached a decision?" Jisoo nodded. "We have, Executor Kwan. The human colonies appreciate the Emperor's offer of separate peace and autonomy." The executor's posture relaxed visibly. "The Emperor will be pleased by your wisdom. Transmit your acceptance of terms, and we will begin withdrawal from human territories immediately." "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," Jisoo said, calmly. "I said we appreciated the offer. I didn't say we accepted it." The executor's translator emitted a harsh sound of confusion. "Clarify your response." The human colonies reject any peace that does not include all species currently fighting for freedom from Imperial control. We will not abandon our allies. Mandibles clicking furiously, the executor leaned toward the screen. This decision is why regrettable. Perhaps you fail to understand the Empire's generosity. This offer is unprecedented. So is our answer, Jisoo replied. But it shouldn't surprise you. You executed a child who tried to help others, then broadcast it as a lesson in fear. Instead, you taught us and every watching species a lesson in unity. The executor's voice grew cold. The Empire has ruled for 9,000 years because we understand power. Your emotional attachment to lesser species will be your downfall. No, Jisoo countered. Your failure to understand that attachment will be yours. After the transmission ended, alarms blared as the Imperial cruisers moved into attack formation. Young-ho hurried to the tactical station, barking orders to prepare. Defensive systems. They'll hit us with everything they have, he warned. The Emperor cannot afford to let this defiance stand. No, Taeho said suddenly, studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. They'll hit us with nothing at all. Before anyone could question him, the sensors confirmed his suspicion. The Imperial cruisers were powering faster than light drives, preparing to jump away. They're retreating? Young-ho asked in disbelief. Tactical withdrawal, Taeho corrected. To prepare for something worse. 3 days later, the answer came in the form of the largest Imperial fleet ever assembled in the outer systems, 30 capital ships including the Emperor's personal dreadnought. Against this armada stood the combined fleet of the Alliance, human vessels, Sorin ships, Velid cruisers, and representatives from a dozen other species who had answered the call. On the bridge of what had once been a Bakhtari command ship, now renamed Hana's Promise, Jisoo and her crew prepared for battle. Taeho, who had formally requested asylum and defected to the Alliance, stood at a tactical station he had helped modify for human use. The Emperor himself commands the fleet, he informed them. This is unprecedented. He never leaves the homeworld. Then, he understands what's truly at stake, Jisoo replied. This isn't about territory or resources anymore. It's about the very foundation of Imperial power, the belief that different species cannot truly unite. The communication array activated, projecting the image of a Bakhtari unlike any Jisoo had seen before, larger, more ornately armored with eyes that seemed to burn with cold fire. I am Emperor Sung of the Eternal Bakhtari Empire, the translator conveyed. I have come to personally witness the folly of this rebellion and bring order back to my realm. Jisoo stepped forward. I am Dr. Kim Jisoo of Earth Descent, speaking for the Alliance of Free Worlds. We are prepared to negotiate terms for the peaceful dissolution of Imperial control over all Alliance worlds. The Emperor's laugh needed no translation. You have courage, human, but courage without wisdom leads to extinction. For the final time, I offer separate terms to humans alone: immediate autonomy, technological access, and my personal guarantee of non-interference. Jisoo didn't hesitate. And for the final time, we decline any terms that abandon our allies. Then you will fall together, the Emperor declared. Know that what comes next was your choice. When the transmission ended, Jisoo turned to her crew. Humans, working alongside members of 7 different species, each bringing unique skills and perspectives to their shared battle. The Emperor is right about one thing, she said. This is our choice. Not just to fight, but to fight together. 300 years ago, humans learned to hide our strength while appearing weak. Now we choose to share that strength while building something new. The battle that followed would be recorded in the histories of a dozen worlds, a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds. Imperial ships hammered the Alliance fleet with weapons designed to exploit the specific weaknesses of each species. But the Alliance had something the Empire couldn't counter: ships crewed by multiple species, each compensating for the other's vulnerabilities. In the final hours, as the massive Imperial dreadnought targeted Hana's Promise, Young-ho looked to Jisoo with grim determination. We won't survive another direct hit. We don't need to survive, Jisoo replied, activating the ship-wide communication. We just need to complete the mission. Across the Alliance fleet, crews heard her next. Words on this is Jisoo. Activate protocol remembrance. Taeho's head snapped up. What is protocol remembrance? Jisoo met his compound eyes calmly. Something we learned from studying Bakhtari psychology. You rule through fear because at your core, you fear extinction above all else. Today, we show the Emperor what that fear truly feels like. Throughout the battle zone, smaller ships suddenly broke formation, accelerating toward specific points around the Imperial dreadnought. Not on collision courses, something more precise. They're targeting the command ships. Sensory array, Taeho realized. But conventional weapons can't penetrate those shields. We're not using conventional weapons, Jisoo explained as the smaller ships reached their positions. We're using understanding. From each Alliance vessel, a signal pulsed, not an attack but a message, broadcast on frequencies that the Bakhtari had evolved to find physically painful when combined in specific patterns. Not lethal, but overwhelming. Disorienting. The Empire's greatest warriors suddenly unable to coordinate, to think clearly, to maintain the rigid hierarchy that had defined their species for millennia. On the Dreadnought's bridge, the Emperor and his commanders collapsed, their highly evolved sensory systems overwhelmed by inputs they had never adapted to process. How? Taeho gasped, clearly affected though less severely than his full-blooded kin. This shouldn't be possible. Minho's team studied captured Bakhtari for years, Jisoo explained. You conquered through superior biology, maintained power through fear, but you never considered that other species might study your biology in return, might find the frequency combinations that your sensory systems cannot filter. Within hours, the battle was over. The mighty Imperial fleet surrendered not to superior firepower, but to the combined knowledge of species who had learned to share their understanding rather than hoard it, as the Empire had done. 1 year later, representatives from 27 formerly subjugated species gathered on Colony 7, renamed New Hope, for the signing of the Galactic Concordat. At the center of the new government complex stood a simple memorial, a life-size sculpture of a small girl holding out a flower, surrounded by the words, For Hana, in the languages of all member worlds. Jisoo stood before the memorial, remembering the solemn child who had once delivered handmade paper birds to the sick and elderly. Beside her, Taeho, now the first Bakhtari representative to the Concordat, studied the statue with his alien eyes. The Emperor never understood, he said quietly. Even as we built our empire, we feared. We believed isolation was strength. We never considered that connection might be stronger. Jisoo nodded. The Bakhtari thought fear would save them. They never understood that threatening our children would end them. Around them, the delegates from worlds that had never before found common cause moved together into the chamber where a new future would be written, not as conquerors and conquered, but as allies who had learned the most important lesson of all true strength comes not from instilling fear but from overcoming it together.